Okay, Unit 3, control frameworks and fraud. We have already finished section 1, that is 35 to 45%, and I don't know to what extent you people are comfortable with section 1. Section 2 is starting, 3 and 4 will be over, so just maximum a month and you will be done with your part 1, inshallah. So we're starting Unit 3. The subunits or the subtopics within the units are control frameworks, enterprise risk management processes, and fraud nature prevention and detection. And finally, we have the fraud indicators, and I'm sure you know what I mean. Moving on, the first subunit, available control frameworks. There are many control frameworks, so we have just been given a brief outline. Remember, these control frameworks are extensive, detailed. We just need to extract the basics and be able to apply them on the questions. As I'm telling you repeatedly, that the application of knowledge is the core of CIA. The focus must be on the questions, getting the basic information from the text. So following our better known control frameworks, the first one from United States is the integrated framework. It's widely known as the COSO model. Then Foreign Corrupt Practices Act's very limited application you've seen in your previous chapters. It is studied in little detail in CMA, and it is studied much more in detail in CPA. So these are the control frameworks related to internal controls. Actually, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act has two parts. One relates to internal controls of listed companies, and then it relates to the foreign corrupt practices or bribery, anti-bribery provisions. Under this law, it is illegal to give any bribe to any foreign official, any foreign political party or its official, or any bribe to any candidate of any foreign political party. So this is not covered as such under this subunit. Then in Canada, we have guidance on control, commonly known as COCO. This is also in our syllabus. The COCO stands for criteria of control. Then in the UK, we have Cadbury report, committee report, Hempel report, and all have been blended into combined code. This would not be studied in your text 3.1, just a little bit awareness. Then we have certain frameworks for internal information technology, control objectives for information and related technologies, called COBIT, control objectives for information and related technology. It is the best known IT control. There is one more within the IT. It is Electronic System Assurance and Control, ESAC. So as I told you, you don't have to read them in detail on an extensive basis. It's just you need to familiarize yourself what they are and how to apply them in the given questions. So let's do the first one, the COSO framework. I'm sure you know COSO stands for the Committee of Sponsoring Organization, and this is a well-known standard internal control framework in the world over. So it defines internal control as, what is internal control? We have already read it much more in detail, just revisiting. So internal control basically is a system affected by the management in an organization. The internal control system is designed, drafted, and implemented in a company by the management. It's an ongoing process. And what does it do for us? Internal control is intended to achieve 3 classes of objectives. What these objectives are, we have read much more in detail in your Unit 1 and 2. But here we'll just be reading the outline. So remember that we just have to focus our efforts only on what we need to learn. So those objectives will be studied in the coming slides. And just operations objectives, reporting objectives, and plan. Why not just look at the figure, the cube of COSO model, then you'll have an idea what I'm talking about, the 3 objectives. Just look at this, the top of this pyramid. Maybe there's one more given at the somewhere. Why don't you just read this or understand the cube first and then read the theory? Yes. So these are the overriding objectives, operational objectives, that your operations must be efficient and effective. Your reporting, internal and external, must be reliable, and compliance with the laws and regulations. This could be also memorized by ORC. These operations affect each and every function, each and every organizational level. Reporting affects each and every organizational function and level. Compliance also, compliance with the laws and regulations also affect the factory floor workers till the top management sitting in the board of directors and the executive management. So operations, reporting and compliance, these are the objectives. Then these are the 5 interrelated components, the elements of COSO framework. We will read about them in detail, the control environment, risk assessment, control activities and all this. So operations, reporting and compliance, these are the basic 3 objectives that we were talking about. So I just wanted to show you where exactly they fit in the whole structure. Moving on, here we go. So internal controls intended to achieve 3 classes of objectives: operations, reporting and compliance. Internal control is an ongoing process. It's a continuing process in an organization that interacts with its day-to-day operations. And who are responsible for designing and implementing internal control? It is implemented, designed and drafted by the management at all levels in the organization. Internal auditors are not responsible for drafting, designing any internal control system. So it is affected by the people in the organization, the board, the executive management, etc. So remember, these controls just provide you reasonable assurance that the organization objectives will be achieved, but it is not an absolute assurance. So internal control is a set of policies, procedures, control activities designed by the people at all levels in the organization, but not internal auditors are not involved in designing, drafting. Since these controls are specifically customized to each company's requirements, so that's why you will see that each company will have its unique set of controls. So these controls must be adaptable to entity structure. That's very important. Let us read about these 3 objectives that he was talking about. First objective was operations. The first objective related to operation is that entities must achieve its mission. Why does an entity exist for? Assets must be protected, safeguarded, and operations must be efficient and effective. So these are objectives related to operations. So controls are designed to achieve the entity's mission, to help protect organization assets, and as far as practicable, ensure effective and efficient operations of the business. Second objective is reporting. The financial information or non-financial information generated must be reliable, on which the decisions are to be made, must be timely and transparent. So this information can be financial, non-financial, internal or external. This is the second objective. Third is that there are various laws that affect the business. So complying with those laws, regulations, contracts, as well as the internal policies of the business. So compliance with laws, rules, regulations, internal policies. So this is all covered in the objective. So there are 3 types of objectives that can be memorized by ORC: operations, reporting objectives, and compliance. So these operations, the controls, the control activities are designed, drafted by the management or the staff at all levels in the organization. Internal auditors are not involved. So we have to be very clear that internal auditors are not involved in designing. Yes, we can provide consultants and advisory, but we do not take the ownership of controls. We do not draft, design or implement. So since these controls are designed by people, so people make mistakes. So we should not consider that the control available in an organization will provide 100% guarantee that everything will be fine. They just provide you the reasonable assurance, mind the word. They can only provide you the reasonable assurance that the companies will achieve its operational or compliance or reporting objectives, but it is not a guarantee. So they provide reasonable assurance that the reporting objectives will be met, compliance objectives will be met, and the operational objectives. So they do not guarantee as such. So let us study the components, the cube that we already studied. These 3 operations, reporting and compliance are the main objectives. Then there are 5 interrelated components. They can be memorized by the word crime. You can easily memorize the components of internal control under COSO by the word crime. And how do we do that? The word C refers to the control activities. The word R refers to the risk management. The word I refers to information technology. The word M refers to monitoring. And then finally, E refers to the control environment. So it is easily memorable using the word crime. So these are the 5 interrelated components: control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring. They will be discussed much more in detail in the coming slides. So let us just first study the control environment. Control environment, the first element of interrelated components of COSO model. This is basically a framework. Just look at this. Control environment is the base, the foundation on which the whole structure of the COSO will be built. You just look at this. Remember the 5 components. Control environment is the base. Risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring. This is a very useful symbol that you can. Control environment is a bottom line. Communication and information are the channels and the reporting lines established within an organization. And just look at this, monitoring is done by the top management or the executive management. So this structure is very useful in learning the overall structure of COSO model. So what is control environment? Control environment basically represents the foundation, the structure, the processes that serve as foundation of the whole system of internal controls. Basically this is the management philosophy, the management way of running the business, operating style. All this is the basis of any control structure in any organization. So integrity and ethics, ethical values, these are set by the top management, setting tone at the top, establishing standards of conduct, the senior management does. How the performance will be evaluated, senior management does. And if there is any deviation, how the corrective actions would be taken. So this all is covered within the control environment. One thing that we must always be familiar with, we must always be aware, that board has an oversight responsibility. Board oversees and provide a strategic direction. But it is the management that actually performs the work. So we have to be very clear that the board demonstrates independence from management, because board has an oversight role. Right? Management is the one who designs, implement these controls. So remember, we have to be very clear that management establishes the rules, the structures, the reporting lines, the authority and responsibility. This is all. And again, commitment to, organization need many resources other than money. We need competent staff. So this control environment in fact will provide a basis to attract, develop and retain competent individuals. So this is very important, that the good control environment, a good structure within the organization, ethical organization that is based upon fair foundations, it will attract, develop and retain competent staff. Next element within this control environment is a system of accountability. Whenever you have been given authority, you're also responsible for certain commitments, certain accountabilities. So organization holds individuals at all levels responsible for their control responsibilities. As I told you, board has a role of oversight and strategic direction, and management establishes controls, management enforces accountability, evaluates performances, etc. This is the domain of management. So enforcement of accountability, who's responsible for what? Finance, marketing, administration, IT. Then we measure performance, like we have 4 responsibility centers. Investment centers are evaluated on return on investment. Profit centers are evaluated on profitability. Revenue centers are assessed and evaluated on their revenue targets achieved. And cost centers are evaluated on variance analysis. So every responsibility center is accountable and their performance is measured by certain performance measures. But one thing very important, that sometimes in a very competitive environment, the management might use some excessive pressures to achieve certain goals, to survive and sustain in a competitive business environment. So there could be in some circumstances that performance measures might be stringent and excessive. But still again the line is very thin whether it becomes a coercion or threat and whether it remains as a challenging target. So that needs to be decided by the management. And then the system, the ethical framework, the overall performance evaluation, all this covered within the control environment. So evaluate performance, how well an employee has performed, and accordingly how should he be rewarded, or if any of the employee is showing unethical behavior or has committed something wrong, then how to discipline these individuals. So these all are the basis, the control environment within which the policies, procedures, activities, performance evaluations, reward system, how to discipline is covered within the control. And this is the prerogative of the management and all the levels of the organization within which people are working. But remember, internal auditors are not to be involved in the designing and implementation system. Next is the risk management. We have already agreed and we have read risk is any unforeseen event that can affect and restrict an organization from achieving its objectives. So managing risk and managing organizational change, this is an important element of COSO. 4 elements or principles relates to risk assessment. First of all, specify objectives what an organization wants to achieve. Profit, growth, value addition, public service, revenue, any objective, could be many objectives. Identify what are the obstacles, the hindrances to those objectives. Identify the risk that will prevent you from achieving those objectives. And then we will study much more in detail in risk management, then how we can manage the risk. We will have many risk responses, whether to accept the risk, avoid the risk, reduce the risk, exploit the risk, or transfer the risk. We will see all this in detail. Identify risk, assess risk, and then identify the suitable, and then select the suitable responses. Then within this risk management, we have consider the potential of fraud risk. How the system of internal control can tackle potential frauds. How do we test the effectiveness of existing internal controls or fraud detection system? And how the changing circumstances in which we are operating, the external environment, internal environment keeps on changing. Identify the changes that could affect the system of internal control. Then we may have to revise the internal controls to make them more useful, more relevant. So this was the first element after control environment. We have read control environment, risk management. The next element we're going to study are the control activities. Yes, this is a very good description what control activities are. Control activities are in fact these strings, the policies, procedures, SOPs that define and guide us what to do. This is a kind of just a string, a controlling string that guides us what to do. We are being controlled by the management. So these are the policies and procedures, and they are applicable at all levels. We have policies for check writing, we have policies for inventory disposal, hiring, and policies at each level. So this is applicable to all levels within the organization. Certain controls that we have already agreed could be preventive, detective, corrective, and directive. So these policies are in fact controls. So certain controls could be preventive, that prevent from a certain untoward event from occurring. And if an untoward event has occurred, a detective system will detect it, and then there are corrective controls that will correct that error before it is too late. Like segregation of duties is a very good example. Segregation of duties is a preventive control. Just I keep on saying that A deposits the cash, B records it in the books, C holds physical custody, and D reconciles this. It's a preventive control, and this has been implemented through procedures and policies. So segregation of duties again is a good preventive control that provide a reasonable assurance that the organization objectives would be met. So there are basically 3 principles that relate to control activities. What they are, first of all, companies differ, their operations differ. So each company will have its own set of controls that are related to its operations. Operating controls related to the operations in the business, various functions that are performed. Then these are related to operations of the business. Then we must have certain controls on IT also, because information technology has become a very crucial part of almost every organization. So this is first set of controls are related to operations. The second, general controls of activities over technology. Technology is playing a great role in the organization these days. So there has to be certain control systems for technology. We'll study about that in COBIT 5 and ESAC in detail in the coming slides. And then how the organization applies or deploys control activities through policy. So three principles that relate to control activities. Controls related to operations, how we select and develop. Then controls related to the IT, and then how these controls will be implemented through policy. So these are the three principles related to control activities. What are control activities? Standards, policies, procedures related to all functions, actions within the organization. It is always recommended that a business should have a robust system of internal control, because good controlled business will manage risk, and those businesses that are controlled will be able to achieve the organizational objective. The third and the fourth element is information and communication. Information communication, the reporting lines, who will report to whom. So business should have a system to obtain, generate and use and communicate information for decision making purpose, to plan, control and coordinate. So we need information how the departments are working, that is to maintain accountability. How well they have worked, this is through performance evaluation and review. So information is required for maintaining accountability, for performance evaluation. This information will flow from top to bottom, means senior managements in the form of directives go down, information goes down. The information could move from bottom to up, and the information can move laterally also. So there should be a system of information and communication. It could be manual, handwritten notes, or it could be digital, based upon electronic mails, emails and notes and etc. So in whatever form, the system, an organization should have a well-defined information system for implementation of